You think rules exist to control you? They don't. Every law you follow, every regulation you obey, every social norm you respect, you've been told it's about keeping you in line, about making you compliant, obedient, small. But that's not the whole truth. It's not even close. Rules don't just constrain you. They construct the very ground you walk on. They're the invisible architecture of every freedom you take for granted. And the philosophers who understood this, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, Kant, they saw something most people miss. That the question isn't whether rules control you, it's whose rules you're following. And why. In this video, you'll discover what they never taught you in school. That compliance isn't slavery. That authority isn't always tyranny. That the most dangerous rules aren't the ones enforced by others. They're the ones you've internalized without ever questioning them. I'll show you the mechanism, the philosophy, the truth hiding in plain sight. Because once you understand what rules actually do, you'll never follow one the same way again. You were born into a world of rules. Stop at red lights. Pay your taxes. Don't steal. Don't kill. You didn't choose these. Nobody asked for your signature, yet every day you obey. Why? Thomas Hobbes had an answer. Writing during England's Civil War in the 1640s, he watched his country tear itself apart, neighbor against neighbor, brother against brother. And he understood something brutal. Without rules, without authority, life becomes nasty, brutish, and short. His solution? Submit to a sovereign. Accept laws not because you love them, but because the alternative is chaos, blood in the streets, survival of the strongest. A world where every interaction is a potential death sentence. You think that's ancient history? Look around. Every time a natural disaster hits, every time infrastructure collapses, the same pattern emerges. Looting, violence, the thin veneer of civilization peeling away in hours. Rules don't exist to oppress you. They exist because you need them. Because cooperation is impossible without coordination. Because your freedom depends on everyone else being constrained too. But Hobbes only told half the story. John Locke saw what Hobbes missed. Writing in the late 1600s against monarchical absolutism, he asked a question that should terrify you. If we surrender to authority for protection, what happens when that authority becomes the threat? Kings claimed divine right. They demanded obedience without question. And Locke said no, not without consent, not without protecting our natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Here's the trap. The moment you accept that rules must be obeyed simply because they exist, you've surrendered your mind. You've become what Hannah Arendt later called the banality of evil. The functionary who follows orders, stamps documents, processes the machinery of horror while saying, "I was just doing my job." Adolf Eichmann organized the Holocaust. When asked why, he didn't cite hatred. He cited duty. He followed the rules. That's the danger of blind compliance. Not that rules are bad, but that treating them as sacred, as beyond question, turns you into a tool, an instrument of whatever system happens to control you. Modern psychology confirms this. The Milgram experiments of the 1960s proved it. People administered what they believed were lethal electric shocks to strangers, not because they were evil, but because someone in authority told them to continue. Because the rule was, the experiment must go on. 65% of participants went all the way. Lethal voltage, screams from the other room, all because they were told to obey. You want to believe you're different, that you'd resist, but the data says otherwise. The mechanism is already installed. Authority speaks, you comply, even when every cell in your body knows it's wrong. This is why philosophers like Rousseau and Kant spent centuries trying to solve a puzzle. How do we get the benefits of rules without becoming slaves to them? Jean-Jacques Rousseau gave us the most disturbing answer. Writing on the eve of the French Revolution, he said that true freedom comes only when you obey laws you've given yourself, when you follow the general will of the collective. Sounds beautiful. Until you read the next part. He wrote that those who refuse must be forced to be free. It's a paradox that haunted the 20th century. Revolutionary governments claiming they liberate people by compelling them into the collective good. Totalitarian regimes arguing that individual resistance is ignorance, that the state knows your true interests better than you do. But Rousseau wasn't a tyrant. He was grasping at something profound, the idea that real authority doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. That the only legitimate rules are the ones you would choose for yourself, that you have chosen for yourself, even if you don't realize it. This is where Immanuel Kant enters, and this is where everything changes. Kant saw the problem clearly. Most people, he said, live under heteronomy, obeying rules imposed by others, by parents, by priests, by kings, by culture. They follow commands like trained animals, seeking reward and avoiding punishment. But human beings, Kant argued, are capable of something higher. Autonomy, self-legislation, the ability to create and follow moral laws from pure reason. He wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone in his moral reasoning." Wait, that sounds familiar, because Kant and Schopenhauer were wrestling with the same truth, that genuine freedom requires thinking for yourself. Here's Kant's revolutionary move. He said you should only follow rules you could will as universal law, rules that would work if everyone followed them. Not because a king demands it, not because God commands it, but because reason itself requires it. Treat people as ends, never merely as means. Don't lie, don't steal. Not because you'll be punished, but because you couldn't rationally will a world where everyone lies and steals, including to you. This is autonomy. You follow the rule not because someone forces you, but because you've imposed it on yourself. You've chosen it through rational reflection. You are both the legislator and the subject, both free and bound. That's the stunning insight. Rules don't destroy freedom. They create it. Because without rules, you'd be trapped in Hobbes's war of all against all. But with the right rules, rules you've rationally endorsed, you can act freely within a structure that protects everyone else's freedom too. The prison becomes a playground. The law becomes liberation. But there's a test, and most rules don't pass it. Not all rules serve autonomy. Not all laws protect freedom. Some exist purely for control, for profit, for the preservation of power. Confucius saw this in ancient China. He warned that strict laws without virtue produce outward compliance but inner emptiness. People follow the letter but miss the spirit. They obey not from wisdom, but from fear. And Lao Tzu went further. He wrote, "The more rules and regulations, the more thieves and robbers." Think about that. More laws create more criminals, because excessive control doesn't eliminate bad behavior. It provokes rebellion. It creates perverse incentives. It turns everyday people into rule breakers just to survive. Modern examples are everywhere. During COVID-19, pandemic rules became the battleground. Mask mandates, vaccine requirements, social distancing orders. One side screamed freedom and refused compliance. The other side invoked collective responsibility and mutual protection. Both sides believed they were right. Both sides had philosophers backing them. But here's what most people missed. The purpose of those rules mattered more than the rules themselves. Were they designed to coordinate public health, to prevent hospitals from collapsing, to protect the vulnerable? Then they passed Kant's test. They treated people as ends, preserving life and dignity. Or were they arbitrary exercises of power, security theater, political posturing dressed as science? Then they failed. They demanded obedience without justification. Heteronomy, not autonomy. The same rule can be tyranny or freedom depending on its purpose. And most people never stop to ask which they're following. Traffic lights coordinate thousands of strangers safely through intersections. That's a rule serving cooperation. Emergency exit signs guide you to safety in a crisis. That's a rule serving life. But a law that criminalizes homelessness, that punishes poverty, that enforces the interests of the powerful while crushing the weak? That's not a rule. That's a weapon. This is where philosophy meets the street, where theory becomes survival. Because the real question isn't, should I follow rules? It's, which rules deserve my obedience? Here's what they don't tell you. Most rules you follow aren't enforced by police. They're enforced by your own mind. Psychologists call it internalization. You absorb social norms so deeply that you don't even notice them. You police yourself. You feel guilt for breaking rules even when no one's watching, even when the rule is arbitrary. Michel Foucault spent his career exposing this mechanism. He showed how modern power works not through violence, but through discipline, through schools and hospitals and offices that train you to monitor yourself, to become your own warden. You think you're free because you don't see chains. But the chains are invisible. They're in your habits, your reflexes, the way you immediately feel wrong when you violate a norm, even a norm that serves no one. That's the genius of modern control. It doesn't need soldiers, it has you. But internalization cuts both ways, because if you can internalize obedience, you can internalize resistance. If you can train yourself to follow, you can train yourself to question. This is what Kant meant by autonomy. Not rejecting all rules, but subjecting every rule to rational scrutiny. Asking, does this rule respect human dignity? Would I endorse it from behind a veil of ignorance, not knowing who I'd be in society? John Rawls used that thought experiment. Imagine you're designing society before you know if you'll be rich or poor, powerful or powerless, healthy or sick. What rules would you choose? You'd choose fairness, equality of opportunity, protection of basic rights, because you might end up at the bottom. That's the filter. Every rule should pass that test. And the ones that don't, those are the ones you question. Challenge, resist. Western philosophy obsesses over individual rights and social contracts. But Eastern thought offers a different lens. Confucius taught that virtue, not law, should govern society. That if you try to regulate people through punishment, they'll avoid wrongdoing but feel no shame. But if you guide them through moral example, they'll develop inner character. The rule becomes unnecessary when the virtue is internalized. Lao Tzu took it further. He believed that excessive governance, too many rules, too much control, creates the very problems it claims to solve. That simplicity and non-interference allow natural harmony to emerge. Govern a great nation as you would cook a small fish. Don't overdo it. These aren't calls for anarchy. They're warnings against over-reliance on external rules, against the illusion that you can legislate morality, that you can force people to be good through punishment and surveillance. Because the more you control, the more resistance you create. The more you regulate, the more people find loopholes. The more you punish, the more creative the crimes become. Real order, Eastern philosophy suggests, comes from inner cultivation. From people choosing virtue not because they fear consequences, but because they've developed wisdom. That's autonomy again, just from a different tradition. And it points to the same truth. Rules work best when you don't need them. When they reflect values you already hold. When they coordinate cooperation rather than compel obedience. You've seen the stories. 1984, The Hunger Games, Brave New World. Every dystopia is a world of rules taken to their extreme. Big Brother doesn't just make laws, he makes them absolute. He controls language itself, newspeak, so you can't even think rebellious thoughts. Panem doesn't just govern, it stages annual death matches to remind you of your powerlessness, to make spectacle of control. These stories resonate because they expose the mechanism. Show what happens when rules exist purely for domination. When authority demands obedience without justification. When compliance becomes the only virtue. But here's the twist. The dystopias also show what's missing. Choice. In Lord of the Flies, stranded boys establish rules. The conch shell, taking turns to speak. And for a while, it works. cooperation emerges, order holds. But when the rules collapse, when authority dissolves, chaos returns. Not because rules are oppressive, but because they were the only thing preventing violence. The real horror isn't the presence of rules. It's rules without consent, power without legitimacy, obedience without reason. That's the line. That's where authority becomes tyranny. And you cross that line every time you follow a rule without asking why. So, what do you do? How do you live in a world of rules without becoming their slave? Start with interrogation. Every rule you follow, ask, why? Why do I stop at this red light? Because it coordinates traffic and prevents crashes. Because I'd want others to stop for me. Because it passes Kant's test. I could will it as universal law. Okay, that rule deserves obedience. Why do I stay quiet in this meeting when I know the decision is wrong? Because I fear judgment. Because I want to be liked. Because I've internalized conformity as safety. That's not a rule. That's cowardice dressed as politeness. And it fails the test. Challenge it. Speak up. Not recklessly, but rationally. Ask the questions others won't. Propose the alternatives everyone's afraid to mention. You might be ignored. You might be criticized. But you'll have acted autonomously. You'll have legislated for yourself. Create a personal ethics checklist. When faced with a rule, ask, does this protect people's rights? Would I endorse it if I didn't know my position in society? Can I rationally will it as universal law? Does it treat people as ends or merely as means? If the rule fails these tests, you have three options. 1. Comply strategically while working to change it. 2. Resist openly through civil disobedience. 3. Exit the system that enforces it. Thoreau went to jail rather than pay taxes supporting slavery. Martin Luther King Jr. violated unjust segregation laws to expose their immorality. They didn't reject all rules. They rejected specific rules that failed the test of justice. That's the model, not anarchism, not blind obedience, but selective compliance guided by rational principles. You become the filter, the arbiter, the autonomous agent Kant described. And that's when something shifts. Here's the paradox they never explain. The freest people aren't the ones without rules. They're the ones who choose which rules to follow. Think about it. An athlete follows rigorous training rules, diet, sleep, practice schedules, but they're not enslaved. They're empowered. The rules create the conditions for excellence. A musician practices scales for hours, repeating the same patterns, following the rules of harmony and rhythm. But that discipline doesn't limit creativity. It enables it. The structure becomes the foundation for improvisation. Rules are like the guardrails on a mountain highway. They don't imprison you. They let you drive faster, more confidently, because you know the boundaries. You know what's safe. Without those guardrails, you'd crawl along in fear, or you'd plummet off the edge. This is what Rousseau meant by being forced to be free. Not literal coercion, but the recognition that certain constraints enable freedom rather than destroy it. You can't have language without grammar. You can't have music without structure. You can't have society without rules. The question is whether those rules are yours, whether you've endorsed them through reason, whether they reflect your autonomous will or someone else's heteronymous command. Because the moment you internalize the right rules, the ones that pass the test, compliance stops feeling like slavery. It feels like mastery. You're not obeying orders. You're executing a strategy you've designed. You're not following commands. You're honoring commitments you've made to yourself and others. You're not being controlled. You're coordinating. That's the transformation. From subject to citizen, from puppet to person, from compliance to autonomy. Remember what we learned about silence and solitude? That the greatest minds withdrew not to escape the world, but to think clearly about it? The same applies to rules. You can't evaluate which rules deserve obedience if you're drowning in noise. If you're swept up in the crowd's momentum, mimicking their compliance or their rebellion without thought. Nietzsche, who walked alone through the Alps, spent years critiquing conventional morality. He called it slave morality, rules created by the weak to constrain the strong. His solution wasn't to reject all rules, but to create his own, to become what he called the overman, the self-legislating individual who transcends herd morality. Jung retreated to his stone tower to develop his psychology, away from institutions and orthodoxies. He followed the rules of science where they served truth, and he broke them where they constrained insight. These thinkers weren't anarchists. They were autonomous. They'd internalized the discipline of philosophy, rigorous thinking, logical consistency, intellectual honesty, but they rejected thoughtless compliance. They subjected every rule to scrutiny. That's the model. Not solitude for its own sake, but solitude as the space where autonomy is forged. Where you step back from the noise and ask, which of these rules reflects my rational will? Which serves human flourishing? Which is just noise, just conformity, just the crowd's gravitational pull? In that silence, you become the philosopher, the legislator of your own life. And then you return to the world, not to obey it, not to rebel against it, but to engage it on your own terms. This is where everything converges. Where Kant meets Confucius, where Western autonomy meets Eastern virtue, where rules transform from chains into tools. You now understand the mechanism. Rules exist because cooperation requires coordination. Blind obedience enables tyranny. Autonomy means following only rules you could rationally endorse. Internalization makes rules invisible and dangerous. Questioning is not rebellion, it's duty. You've seen the extremes. Hobbes' absolute sovereign preventing chaos. Locke's consent protecting rights. Rousseau's general will balancing individual and collective. Kant's categorical imperative as the test of legitimacy. Foucault's disciplinary power as invisible control. Confucius's virtue replacing external law. Lao Tzu's warning against overregulation. And you've learned the practice. Interrogate every rule. Why does it exist? Apply the tests, rights, universality, dignity, fairness. Comply strategically, resist rationally, or exit intentionally. Cultivate internal virtue so external rules become unnecessary. Withdraw to think clearly, then engage with autonomous will. This is the birth of the autonomous mind. Not the rebel who rejects all rules, not the slave who accepts all rules, but the free person who chooses which rules to follow and why. You are both the citizen and the sovereign, both the subject and the legislator, both bound and free. That's the paradox, that's the power, and once you grasp it, you can never unsee it. The world will continue making rules, governments will pass laws, corporations will establish policies, cultures will enforce norms. Your job is not to obey them all, or to reject them all. Your job is to evaluate them all. To become the philosopher-citizen who asks, does this rule deserve my compliance? Sometimes the answer will be yes. The rule serves cooperation, protects dignity, enables freedom. Follow it consciously, not because you must, but because you've chosen to. Sometimes the answer will be no. The rule serves power, violates justice, demands obedience without reason. Resist it strategically. Challenge it openly. Change it or exit it. And sometimes the answer will be, I'm not sure yet. I need to think more, research more, discuss more with people I trust. That's fine too. Because autonomy doesn't mean having all the answers. It means refusing to accept answers without scrutiny. So here's your ritual. Tonight, sit in silence. No phone, no noise, no distractions. Make a list of the rules you follow. Traffic laws, work policies, social norms, moral principles. For each one, ask, why do I follow this? If you can give a good reason, if it passes the tests, keep it. Make it yours consciously. If you can't, if it's just habit, just fear, just conformity, Mark it, question it, decide whether to challenge it or abandon it. This is how you reclaim your autonomy. Not by rejecting all authority, but by becoming your own authority. Not by living without rules, but by living by rules you've chosen. And when you do that, when you internalize that discipline, something extraordinary happens. You stop being pushed around by the world. You stop being trapped between blind obedience and reckless rebellion. You become what Kant called a person in the kingdom of ends, an autonomous agent, a self-legislating being. You become free, not from rules, but through them. That's the surprising truth, the one they never taught you. Rules aren't meant to keep you compliant. They're meant to make you free, but only if you choose them yourself. Now go. Question everything. Follow nothing blindly, and become who you were always meant to be. The autonomous mind in a world of noise. The philosopher-citizen who obeys only reason. The free person who creates their own chains and wears them with pride. Because they chose them. Because they are them. That's the final law, the only one that matters. Choose your rules, or they'll choose you.